Greetings, wrestling fans, and welcome back to the channel. And today, we're going over the second night of the WWE draft. Now, just like with night one, I'm not going to go over what went on Monday Night Raw. You all saw what happened, so I don't really need to tell you all. But anyway, one thing I will give Triple H a bit of credit for is stuck to his word. He said the champions were protected and they were not going to be eligible other than the women's champions, Asuka and Kairi. Because I was fully expecting him to either draft Roxanne Perez to the main roster at some point, but kudos to him. He restrained himself from breaking the rules. So good on you, Triple H. You stuck to your rules. What's the point in making rules if you're not going to follow it? So let's begin, shall we? The first pick went to Monday Night Raw, obviously, because it was on Raw. And they drafted Gunther and Ludwig Kaiser Imperium as the first draft pick. So here's the weird thing here. I kind of expected... Here's the weird thing. I, for some reason, just expected CM Punk to be the first overall draft pick. I'm like, if you got the draft, why would you not want to pick CM Punk first? I just thought that was a bit weird, but whatever. I guess they wanted to make things a bit unpredictable when it comes to the first round, I suppose. But anyway, Imperium were the first pick. Gunther and Ludwig. No Giovanni, because he's now on his own. Jade Cargill was the first pick for SmackDown, and she stays on SmackDown. No surprises there. She's in a tag team with Bianca Belair, so that makes perfect sense. And also, it would make Nick Aldis look really retarded if he lost both Jade and Bron Breakker. Damage Control are now going to Monday Night Raw. Dakota Kai, Io Sky, Kairi Sane, and Asuka. Hallelujah! We are now free from the Bianca Belair feud with Damage Control. Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill are going to win the Tag Team Championship, Women's Tag Team Championships, which means Asuka and Kairi will be stuck on Monday Night Raw. So when they lose the Tag Team titles, they'll become exclusive to Monday Night Raw. So that's what's going to happen. There's no way in hell Jade and Bianca are going to be losing. No way in hell. I'll be shocked if they actually lose. Kevin Owens, he stays on SmackDown. I think this might have been the first time he was actually drafted to stay on a brand. I am not 100% sure on that. But I think this was the first time he actually stayed, because most of the time he's always switching back and forth. So it's mostly every year he's kind of hot potatoing back between Raw and SmackDown. So this might have been the first time that he's actually stuck to a show. Maybe he stayed on Raw in 2020? I can't remember for sure. But, maybe he might have stayed on Raw from 2020 to 2021. I can't remember. So round 2 was next, and CM Punk was the first draft pick to Monday Night Raw in round 2, which makes sense, keeping CM Punk on Raw. Bobby Lashley, Angelo Dawkins, Montez Ford, and B-Fab stay on SmackDown, which they're known as the Pride. They have never been called that on TV, by the way. They've never been called that on TV, but for some reason now they're calling them the Pride, where they've never called them that. Sure, I think I remember Bobby Lashley might have given them that name, but WWE never said it on TV until now, which is weird. Next is Braun Strowman. He stays on Monday Night Raw, and he's now back. He's now back on TV, fully fit, ready to go. He came out in a segment saving Jey Uso from that idiot, Logan Paul. And it remains Tiffy time on SmackDown as Tiffany Stratton stays on SmackDown. I was a little bit surprised by this because everyone says, oh, WWE don't like separating couples. You know, we hear it all the time. Oh, WWE don't like separating couples. Well, they just separated a couple. So, what are you going to say now, people that say that, oh, WWE don't like separating couples? I definitely thought Tiffy was going to be on Raw, but as I said, she just came to SmackDown. There'd be no reason to move her to Monday Night Raw, other than the fact that Ludwig's there. So now we get round 3. And the first pick to round 3 was Latino World Order. Rey Mysterio, Dragon Lee, Joaquin Wilde, Cruz del Toro, Zelina Vega, and Carlito. They are now all on Monday Night Raw. Now this one made sense. I think I originally guessed that they would move them to Monday Night Raw. But, man, I really hope they have something for Zelina Vega to do, man, because, man, she is in a loaded Raw Women's Division right now. I will say the Women's Divisions look much better now. The one thing I will say, the Women's Divisions do look much better now. So, let's hope and pray that things are actually better now with the Women's Division. And for Christ's sake, give them time, for goodness sake. Legado del Fantasma staying on SmackDown. To me, this makes sense because it was time to separate Legado and LWO. It was time to separate them. It was either LWO would end up staying on SmackDown or Legado staying on SmackDown. One was going to stay and the other one was going to change. So regardless, there you go. Next, we got Drew McIntyre picked in the 3rd round, and this obviously upset Drew McIntyre. Now, come on, now this just made too much sense. When it came to the draft, I immediately knew WWE was going to be like, yeah, they'll draft CM Punk first, but then Drew McIntyre will be picked later. And then Drew will start complaining that he was drafted, he was drafted later before Punk, so it just made all the sense in the world. And then the final pick of the 3rd round, Shinsuke Nakamura went back to SmackDown. Shinsuke Nakamura basically did a Seth Rollins here. For those who don't remember, I think it was the 2020 draft, in the pandemic draft, I think Seth Rollins was drafted to SmackDown, and then by the time the next draft came around, the 2021 draft, Seth Rollins was immediately drafted back to Monday Night Raw. So he had like his little run on SmackDown, and then he went back to Raw. This was basically what happened with Shinsuke Nakamura. He had a little run on Monday Night Raw, but then he's gone right back to SmackDown. He went right back to SmackDown. Because Seth Rollins spent his whole career on Raw, had a small run on SmackDown, and then went back to Raw. Shinsuke Nakamura, same thing. Had a long run on SmackDown, had a little run on Raw, and then right back to SmackDown. So Shinsuke Nakamura and Seth Rollins have something in common. That they don't stick around on their opposing shows for too long. The Judgment Day staying on Raw makes too much sense. You know, I was kind of hoping they'd switch, but I kind of see why they kept them, because Damian and Finn Balor seems to be the direction they are going here. Naomi staying on SmackDown, which I guess is going to confirm that Jimmy Uso is most likely going to be back on SmackDown whenever he's fully healed. And then the first part, then we get NXT. When we get NXT next, going to Raw is Ilya Dragunov, the Mad Dragon himself, on Raw. And I'm kind of a bit bummed out that he's on Raw, because now he's on the same show as Sheamus, don't get me wrong, that's a match I would love to see, but he's also on the same show as Gunther. So basically, Raw has this massively stacked men's division. And I know people wanted to see Dragunov and Gunther have a match with each other, but man, oh man, can I say, it would have been better if these two were just separated for a bit, and then eventually build up to them being on the same brand, but hey, you know what? Triple H era, he can do what he wants. And the final pick of the 4th round was music to my ears as SmackDown drafted Chelsea Green and Piper Niven. Oh, happy days! Happy freaking days! I no longer have to hear Chelsea Green! Thank you, Triple H. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for doing this. Even Triple H realized how ear bleeding it was, and now it's time for a change. Good freaking grief, man. Good freaking grief. I'm so glad I never had to have my ears bleeding from Samantha Irvin saying Chelsea Green's name. Don't get me wrong, I love Samantha Irvin, but the way she says Chelsea Green really, really, really is annoying. And for those that like it, you have serious problems. You have serious problems. You like your ears being hurt? Look, I like Samantha too, but man, I just don't like how she says Chelsea's name. But good riddance. I never have to hear it again. Because there's no way in hell Adam Pearce would want Chelsea Green back on his show. No way in hell he would want Chelsea Green back on his show. And even he was happy that he no longer had to deal with Chelsea Green. Round 5. We get the New Day staying on Raw. Pretty Deadly staying on SmackDown. We get Lyra Valkyria from NXT going to Monday Night Raw. Now, to me, when I look at this draft pick, I look at it as, okay, this one I understand they bring her up because there's nothing left for Lyra Valkyria to do. And I saw a lot of people saying, it's funny how she's on the same show as Becky Lynch. And I'm thinking to myself, are you guys actually surprised she's on the same show as Becky Lynch? I'd be more shocked if she was drafted to SmackDown. To me, it makes too much sense for the reasons for her to be on Raw. I guarantee you, when Becky Lynch starts feuding with Damage Control, they're going to have Lyra Valkyria be Becky Lynch's tag team partner. Like, I used to see Lyra Valkyria being one of little Becky's allies. They'll have Lyra tag up with Becky Lynch when she's feuding with Damage Control. So to me, it makes a lot of sense for why Lyra would be on Raw. Again, I'd be shocked if she wasn't. I'd be more shocked if they said SmackDown got Lyra Valkyria. And then the final pick of round 5 was another draft pick I was very happy to see. That was Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell to SmackDown. I'm very happy to hear about this one. This was one I made in my predictions. If you saw my predictions, this was one I predicted to take place. I predicted this change, and I am glad that they actually did do that. I'm going to be honest, I did not expect them to, let alone I didn't expect them to get drafted. I let alone didn't even expect them to change. So, I was expecting Indy and Candice to stay on Raw because, you know, it's Raw. But hey, glad Triple H understands you gotta move people. So then we get the final round. The final testament of Karrion Kross, AOP, Scarlett, and Paul Ellering are now on Raw. Now here's the thing. I know I said these guys are going to go to NXT, and I believe I also made it in a different predictions. I think I also said they'd be on Raw in another predictions video. Now, you guys know I had an original draft video, but I eventually deleted it and did an updated one. And I believe I said they were going to be on Raw in that lineup. I could be wrong, but I remember saying Final Testament would go to Raw at one point. But hey, it was a prediction I made, I remember making, and I'm glad that actually happened. Will they get a better push on Raw? Probably, because it's a 3-hour show. But I still don't care about them. Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa drafted to SmackDown. This one just makes too much sense because you moved Candice LeRae to SmackDown. You'd be foolish to leave Johnny Gargano on the same show. So Johnny Gargano and Ciampa going to SmackDown. And honestly, I think a 2-hour show would be better for Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. Because their whole thing is wrestling. Their whole thing is wrestling. They're not storytellers, they're wrestlers that just put on good matches. So I think this actually works better for them. So I think a 2-hour show actually works better for them instead of a 3-hour one. The last pick for Monday Night Raw in the 6th round was Big Bronson Reed. How in the hell do you have Bronson Reed drafted this late? This man, Bronson Reed, should have been drafted in at least 4th round, maybe 2nd round before Braun Strowman. Like, he should have been drafted higher than this. He should have been drafted higher than the last pick for Raw in the 6th round. Like, seriously, so ridiculous how you're making him the last guy overall picked on Raw. And the overall final pick on TV was Blair Davenport from NXT to SmackDown. Now, I'm actually quite a bit of a fan of Blair Davenport. I think she's actually pretty good wrestler. And I'm actually really happy that she's now on SmackDown. But she was also one of my picks to win the new NXT Women's North American Championship. So now, I'm very curious to see what happens. But hey, Blair Davenport, I'm okay with that. Alright, so now let's get to the supplement draft picks. The ones that didn't happen on screen. The ones that were announced on social media. These are the ones that were announced on social media. We got Apollo Crews going from Raw to SmackDown. Please use him. Remember when Apollo Crews was Intercontinental Champion? Man, those were great times. Apollo Crews was so good. Please use him. He's so damn good. He's so damn good. He deserves better than what he's been given, man. Sure, maybe moving him to SmackDown might do well for him, but it's Apollo Crews at this point. Like, at this point, it doesn't matter what show he's on, he just never gets booked better, unless it's NXT. There, he got booked better. Though he never won any championships in NXT, but at least he was actually used in NXT. The Creed brothers and Ivy Nile staying on Raw, that makes a lot of sense, because, you know, the rumors of the Creeds joining Chad Gable, yeah, so that makes a whole lot of sense. Dijak coming up from NXT to Monday Night Raw. Hey, kudos to Dijak, man. T-Bar, kudos to him. I'm actually quite glad he got called up. He's really damn good. He's really damn good, Dijak. He's really damn good. And we all know, and if you watched NXT during the Black and Gold era, like I did previously, you would know Triple H was a massive fan of Dijak. Having him challenge for the North American title and all that stuff, you know how much of a massive fan Triple H was of Dijak. Will he treat him the same way that he did in NXT? Well, I sure as well hope so. Because Dijak, man, he's so criminally underrated. He is so good. He's such a great wrestler. Nice to see Dijak finally get the call-up that he actually deserves. Not the one where he comes up as Retribution wearing a silly mask and being called T-Bar. I could definitely see him versus Sami Zayn for the Intercontinental Championship. Give me Dijak and Bronson Reed friggin' Dijak, Damian Priest. You know, there's a lot of great match choices for him. And I'm really glad that he's on Raw. Very happy about that. Giovanni Vinci is now been drafted to SmackDown. Now, this makes perfect sense. I mean, you have the guy split away from Imperium. It would make no sense to leave him on Raw. No sense at all. It would just make no sense at all. Drafting this guy to SmackDown made too much sense. And if I can be blunt with you guys, I don't mind Giovanni Vinci. I actually like him. You know, I wasn't a big fan of him or Ludwig a while ago. Like, maybe a couple of years ago, I wasn't really a big fan of them at first. But over time, they've grown on me, both of them. I think Giovanni is actually pretty underrated. And I think this singles run could be good for him. I watched his singles run previously in NXT 2.0. I liked his little singles run he had in NXT 2.0. And I'm hoping they actually kind of give him that similar gimmick and actually utilize him. He's got a ton of potential. I think he actually has a really good chance of being a good superstar if they can book him correctly. Like I remember someone called him a Italian version of Cesaro, which I thought was pretty hilarious. But hey, you know, he's got a lot of skill, and I think Giovanni Vinci could be a underrated superstar. I think he's very underrated. I hope they actually give him an opportunity and not just use him as a squash talent for the superstars that they push. Katana Chance and Gaten Carter staying on Monday Night Raw. Kind of wish they changed, but oh well. You know, you kind of need to have a balanced amount of tag teams on Raw and SmackDown, I guess. Natalya staying on Raw. Just put her in NXT. Just put her in NXT. Couldn't you at least allowed Ava to make at least one choice to take someone from the main roster? Like Natalya. Like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of this? There's no point of this. There's no point of keeping her on Raw. She's just gonna rock up in NXT. You should have just let NXT at least take a few people. People talk about how NXT is going to a new network and they need to start getting some, and NXT should start getting some superstars. Well, Natalya made perfect sense to actually get drafted to NXT. You know, the first ever draft pick goes to NXT. Their first ever draft pick, Natalya. But no. Waste of time. Waste of a pick. Also a waste of time to include NXT if they weren't going to get anyone. New Catch Republic! Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. They now are on Monday Night Raw. They are now on Monday Night Raw, which honestly I don't mind. You know, new change of scenery for them. New change of scenery for Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. First time both of them are on Raw. And now they're on the same show as Sheamus again. Well, Pete Dunne is anyway. Maybe we get another Brawling Brutes reunion, but this time with Tyler Bate. The New Brute Republic. Don't do that, Triple H. Don't do that. Just keep Sheamus as he is. The next man that was drafted to Monday Night Raw was a man that was called up to Monday Night Raw last year and didn't do a single thing. And now, for some reason, Adam Pearce drafts a superstar that he hasn't used a single time on Raw, but he decides to keep him on Raw, that being Odyssey Jones. Man, this dude really is an Odyssey. I think oddity was the word I was thinking of. But man, this guy is an Odyssey. He was called up last year to Monday Night Raw, had 0 matches, 0 wins, 0 losses, 0 draws, 0 matches. And now this guy is on Raw again. Unless you have plans to get this guy on TV, this guy is useless. Now, I know who Odyssey Jones is. I have seen him a few times in NXT. But man, this dude, You know, this dude is useless. He's had 0 matches. Why draft a guy that you haven't used once? Makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me to draft a guy that you haven't used one time. And the final overall pick, I consider this the final overall pick, because she's listed right at the very bottom, that being Tegan Nox to SmackDown. Now, obviously, you smartasses are going to say, well, it's in alphabetical order, that's why she's listed down the bottom. But whatever. Tegan Nox was the final person overall drafted, and she's going to SmackDown, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with her being on SmackDown, because at least she's going to be on a fresher roster, and hopefully she gets more TV time, and hopefully she's not just a squash talent for Nia Jax to toss around every few weeks. This is their chance to... They've freshened out the roster, the women's divisions really well here. I will say that. They've done a good job at freshening up the women's division, giving both women's division refreshed rosters. So hopefully they can do something good with it. So overall, guys, that, my friends, is the WWE draft in its entirety, and it's concluded. Now, there could be trades, and there could be trades that happen before Backlash. So, if any of that happens, I'll be sure to let you all know. But thank you all so much for watching this draft. Overall, Night 2 was definitely better. I definitely thought Night 2 was definitely better. And more people changed. More people changed. Bit more balanced and refreshed. So overall, Night 2 was definitely better than Night 1. So overall, great stuff. Thank you all for joining me, and I'll hit that thumbs up, and I'll see you all on the other side.